Folks, it happened. My Warhammer Old World box has finally arrived, and I am a happy hobby goblin. Or skeleton, I guess. So today I'm following the Warhammer YouTube trend, albeit a few weeks late, and I'm making my own Old World video. Today I just kind of wanted to share my thoughts on the box itself, give a little review, and maybe even teach you guys how I'm going to paint up my boner boys. Bony boys. Anyways, let's dive right in to the housekeeping portion of the video. First off, thank you for stopping by. I really actually do appreciate it. And secondly, big news. I'm going to be launching my Discord server today, which means you're welcome to join. Inside the Discord, we have all sorts of cool things talking about minis and, more talking about minis. So it's a great time. You should show up. Chalupa, what is going on here? Can I help you? Don't know. Folks, Chalupa has shown up. She's here. Next up is your friendly reminder that I'm live on Twitch every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. So stop on by for fun shenanigans like listening to John Cena's 2005 hip-hop masterpiece, WWE, You Can't See Me, while I paint minis. Lastly, remember to like and subscribe. It makes a huge difference to you boy and the whole channel, and I've set aside a little pie-in-the-sky goal of hitting 10K subscribers this year. If somehow that does actually happen, I solemnly swear that I will purchase and paint something very cool. So smash that motherfucking sub button if you want to see me do that. Now, back to the video. So what is Warhammer the Old World? Well, basically, it's an entirely new game system that takes place in the good old-fashioned Old World. For the uninitiated, basically Games Workshop had this little thing called Warhammer Fantasy that many people really, really enjoyed until they decided to end it and replace it with another thing called Age of Sigmar that everyone loved, and there was no problems, and everyone was really happy about it. Yeah, okay, everyone was actually really mad. But some of the more well-adjusted nerds got over it and started to enjoy Age of Sigmar. Personally, I love Age of Sigmar, and I actually probably play it more than I do 40k. Quick little aside about Age of Sigmar, but I'm too proud not to mention it. My whole AOS army is all squigs, and I fucking love it. Seriously, everything in my army either is a squig or is riding a squig, and I mean, look at this guy. We got Purple Berry Colossal Cave Squig. Anyways. But yeah, Age of Sigmar exists, and now things are mostly alright. The game is in great condition, the lore is pretty decent, but it does have a little problem. It's not the Old World. You see, nostalgia for the Old World never really died, and in addition to that, some very popular armies didn't make the cut to be transferred over into Age of Sigmar, like the Tomb Kings and Bretonnians. Another thing is that there's this little video game called Total War Warhammer, which introduced millions of new people to the Warhammer universe. Unfortunately for Mr. James' Workshop, it introduced them to a world that doesn't really exist anymore. And people were clamoring for a return to the world of Warhammer Fantasy. And, well, I was one of those people. So, story time. Once upon a time, I was a young lad who didn't know shit about Warhammer. I mean, I couldn't tell my Snotlings from my Gretchens. I'd always been a big fan of the Total War series, but I'd literally never even heard of Warhammer. Way back when they released, the first Total War Warhammer game, and I started watching YouTube playthroughs of the Tomb Kings campaign, and I instantly fell in love with it. I love the gameplay, but most importantly, I kind of just love the sheer novelty of fantasy Egyptian-style skeletons kicking ass in the desert. Now, it would be a while before I actually got into the hobby side of things, but ever since I've always wanted a Tomb Kings army because, well, they're the faction that I credit for me getting started in Warhammer. And up until now, a Tomb Kings army was always kind of an impossible thing to get. I guess I could have bought the minis on eBay, but I got these super annoying things called bills, and I think I have to pay them. And that's where Warhammer the Old World comes in. Basically, they're starting to remake old minis that have been out of print for 20 years, and now they're, well, somewhat affordable, which is a massive dub for you boy. And that brings us to our first point. Who is this for? Well, the obvious answer is folks who have a strong nostalgia for games that they played when they were growing up, or younger folks that got interested in the world through Total War Warhammer games, or, just whatever. That being said, I would consider this to be more geared towards experienced hobbyists, but I'll kind of get into that a little bit later. So now for the big question, is it actually good? Hell yeah. Fine, I guess I'll elaborate. The box is really fucking cool in my opinion. Personally, I love it, but I'm a little bit biased because, well, that's me. When I review a box, or I guess going forward when I review a box, because I've never really reviewed a box on this channel before, the first place that I'm going to start is value. I don't know about you guys, but it's extremely important for me to make sure that I'm getting the most bang for my buck out of the purchases that I make for Warhammer because, well, The stuff is expensive and it's gotta be good. Fortunately, this box does not disappoint in that regard. If you were to price out the parts of the box in like 2003 and adjust them for inflation, you'd end up with about, $400 worth of stuff. Now, I had to estimate because there's a few models in there that weren't, around back then, but when you compare that with the $290 price tag, I'd say it's not too shabby. But what all do you get in the big box? For starters, you'll be walking out of the store with about 1,250 points worth of minis, which puts you pretty darn close to the titular 2,000 points that most games are played at. Those 1,250 points consist of a High Priest on Bone Dragon, a Tomb Prince, 40 Skeleton Warriors, 3 Skeleton Chariots, 32 Skeleton Archers, 8 Skeleton Horsemen, 8 Skeleton Horse Archers, and...
Hi, can I take your order?
55 burgers, 55 fries, 55 tacos, 55 pies, 55 cokes, 100 tater tots, 100 pizzas, 100 tenders, 100 meatballs, 100 coffees, 55 wings, 55 shakes, 55 pancakes, 55 pasta, 55 peppers, and 155 tater.
Altogether, you're looking at about like 94 models by my math, which is not good math, so there's a chance that that's completely wrong, but the point is, you get a lot of fucking minis. In addition to the minis, you can get some dice, some templates, the core book, and these sticks that are probably important, but I wouldn't know because I still need to actually learn how to play the game. Reading is hard. Next, we're going to be talking about if the models themselves are actually cool and good. As subjective of the question as this is, I do think the answer is yes. The long answer is yes, but beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Here's the thing, folks. These minis are old, except for the 2 new ones, but that's kind of besides the point. Most of these minis are pretty old, which means that they have a certain, old-timey look to them. Basically, if we compare them to the minis that GW cranks out today, they definitely kind of lack some of the realism and detail that we've come accustomed to. Now, if you're like me, you absolutely love this and completely embrace the old-school looks of these chunky bone boys. But even if you're wrong, I can understand how someone might not be too keen on spending this much money on old minis. And that brings us back to when I said this box is probably for experienced hobbyists. Old sculpts, love them or hate them, come with their own challenges hobby-wise. Well, I find them to be a breeze to paint. We have to remember that manufacturing technology wasn't the same back then because these models are not fun to put together. There's some pretty egregious mold lines and mold slip that require a pretty decent amount of cleanup. And on top of that, some of the pieces don't exactly fit together perfectly, which means gaps and, you do have to repair them if you want them to look good. Furthermore, all of the skeletons are modular. So, well, that's great for possibility and creativity stuff. It also means that for 72 skeleton warriors and archers, each one of them has 6 tiny little pieces that need to be glued together individually, which after doing it, 72 times, does get a little bit old. For those of you that are keeping track, that's 432 pieces, which is a lot. That being said, don't let this discourage you from buying the box if you really want it. Is it the most fun that I've ever had building minis? No, but it's, manageable, it's possible, and it just might take a bit. With that out of the way, it's time for the moment that you've all been waiting for. I'm going to show you how I'm going to paint up my little bony boys for
maximum efficiency.
First things first, we're going to do a white prime because we're about to put on a lot of bright colors, and a black prime won't do us any favors down the line. Next up, we're going to do a layer of Morghast bone. This is going to set up our bone color and give us a decent shadow color for later. I'm going to use my airbrush for this, but if you don't have an airbrush, you could absolutely use a regular hand brush for this. Once our layer is dried, it's time for an all-over wash of Agrax Earthshade. Use your brush to guide it into the recesses of the model and avoid any unwanted pooling. For this step, it's super important that you let it dry before moving on because the next step is a pretty heavy dry brush of Screaming Skull. You're going to want to make sure that you're hitting all over the mini, and you want to make sure that you're not pressing too hard because you want to avoid getting paint in the recesses. As you can see here, the key to getting a good old-fashioned GW Skelly is having those super shaded recesses. That being said though, don't feel like you need to be super accurate because we're going to be going over everything later. Next up, we're going to come back with another much lighter dry brush of Pure White. Be pretty sparing in this step because we still want to be able to see most of that previous layer that we just put down. Now we're on to the rest of the details, which isn't much considering 80% of this mini is just straight bone. For the shield and the headband, I'm going to use Sotek Green, and then I'm going to edge highlight all that with a light blue, doesn't matter which one. I know this is supposed to be speed painting, and edge highlighting isn't really, speedy technique, but the edges of the shield are very, very flat, which makes it super easy to come in with the side of your paintbrush and just knock it out completely. I think all in all, it took me about 30 seconds to, do the edge highlights for the shield, which is no time at all, and I think it really does make a huge difference in the overall quality of the mini. After the shield and the headband are all done, I need to move on to the spear, which is seriously dead simple. Get it? Because, they're undead. Yeah, I'll fucking leave. The spear is just a base of burnt red and then a quick layer of Mephiston red on top of that to make it pop a bit. If you want to get really fancy with it, you can take a little Agrax Earth Shade and recess shade the areas where the spear meets the hand, but not necessary at all. Lastly, we have the gold parts, which is literally just rich gold by Pro Acryl, followed by a quick wash of Agrax Earth Shade, and then finished up with some highlights of pale gold. And there you have it, folks, a quick Skelly in about 30 minutes. And I think that will do it for this week's video. To wrap it up, I absolutely love this box. I'm super happy with my purchase. Is it expensive, and is it going to take a metric fuck ton of time to get this stuff done? Yeah, but if you're a massive fan of the Tomb Kings or you're just curious, I'd absolutely recommend it. The only caveat that I do have is that, remember, these minis are old, and that comes with everything that an old mini comes with, including all the not so fun stuff. But if you can get over it, absolutely worth it. Nevertheless, thank you for stopping by. Remember to like and subscribe, and don't forget, the only bad mini is a non-painted mini.